Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And oh my god, Zimbabwe, over and over and over again, the problems continue to amount and it's just getting worse and worse. But before we get into that, I just want to tell everyone, because we've been so heavily shadow banned lately, please check the link posted at the top of the comments. It's pinned there. Help us out any way you can because it's getting absolutely crippling and insane. But anyway, back to the story. Zimbabwe recently overthrew Mugabe, and it doesn't seem to help them a whole lot that they replace government with government and centralization with centralization, because of course going back many years ago, Zimbabwe hit a massive hyperinflationary event, and of course they brought in all these other currencies from around the world, being the first multi-currency country in the world. And I find it crazy, John, that we're continuing to see these things mount because they replaced Mugabe with this Mnangagwa guy, and then he, like we recently reported on it, he just raised the price of fuel like crazy and then fled the country, and all these protests happened, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. But I want to go into this from several different angles. So we'll start by looking at this article out of Bloomberg, which says why Zimbabwe is fed up with using the US dollar. And by the way, we reported on this years ago and talked about how this was not going to end well. But anyway, as the article goes into, a decade after Zimbabwe scrapped its own currency to tackle hyperinflation and began using instead mainly the US dollar, the economy is back in free fall. Fuel and banknotes are hard to come by, less than 10% of the workforce is formally employed, and consumers are being charged different prices depending on how they pay for purchases. President Emmerson Mnangagwa's administration has now introduced a new financial instrument in a bid to address cash scarcity and restore normality to the currency markets. What's happened to Zimbabwe's money? Zimbabwe became the world's only multi-currency economy in 2009 when it adopted the dollar, euro, South African rand, and other currencies as legal tender. The new currency regime initially stabilized prices, but it also increased imports and gave rise to a chronic shortage of banknotes. To fund government spending and help ease the liquidity crisis, the central bank began printing bond notes in 2016 that were pegged, at least theoretically, to the dollar. Meanwhile, most commercial transactions are conducted electronically. The parallel systems have resulted in multiple exchange rates while the shortage of cash has persisted. Number two, how's the government tackling the problem? The government dropped its insistence that the bond notes and an electronic equivalent are at par with the dollar, and the central bank set up an interbank foreign exchange market to facilitate electronic trade in the securities, henceforth to be known as RTGS dollars. The move effectively devalues the bond notes, which traded at a wide discount to their dollar face value on the black market. The bank's governor, John Mnangagwa, says the move should eliminate the multi-pricing system and address cash shortages. Not everyone is so confident. Ex-finance minister and senior opposition leader Tendai Biti says the Zimbabwe dollar has been reintroduced through the back door. He predicts the new unit is doomed to failure because people won't trust it and the government lacks reserves to shore it up. The new unit began trading at 2.5 per US dollar, a rate Mnangagwa said was agreed with commercial lenders. And of course, the rest of the article just goes into how terrible Mugabe was and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there was a military coup and they overthrew Mugabe and replaced him with another tyrant. And what happens? Well, they replace a hyperinflated currency with a new currency or multiple currencies. And then it leads to, oh, wait, another currency crisis? Because Zimbabwe is suffering more than almost any country in the world. And I have to kind of laugh, as sad as it is, at this Yahoo article, which says, is Zimbabwe the next Venezuela? Wait a second here, guys. Wasn't Venezuela the next Zimbabwe? And now we're repeating again? Isn't this a testament to the insanity of central planning, government tyranny over and over and over again, fixing cancer with cancer? John, what do you think about all this as this continues to perpetuate? Because the inflation in Zimbabwe and the chaos on the streets is getting to peak levels. It's insane.
Well, Josh, just to formulate more on, you said that Zimbabwe was the new Venezuela, or Venezuela was the new Zimbabwe. Actually, before that, even Venezuela had a hyperinflation again. So just like these cycles between these bad countries and bad monetary policies that are happening, where they just seem that, to have control over the printing presses is something that they can't control at all, because they have too much corruption in those countries. So they just want to print a whole bunch of money to give money to their buddies, to everybody else. And then you have the major problem with too many units. And actually, you said something else that they mentioned in that article, and it's the number one thing that backs any fiat currency, and it's trust. Number one is trust, people. It's actually trusting in the currency. And if people don't trust in the currency, it's going to fail instantly. That is the problem here. And that's probably what you're going to see in Zimbabwe. It's not very long ago. It's under 10 years ago that they had a hyperinflation. People are still leery about that in Germany, of course, because the older population there actually saw the Weimar hyperinflation. So people...
Well, it'd have to be over 100, but yeah, I agree. It's pretty much one of the biggest hyperinflations in the history books.
Yeah, the thing is, though, that hyperinflations in Germany, that people have been putting warnings forth to Germany now, that you better be prepared for something terrible to happen to the euro system. You're seeing those warnings were about 100 years old, but now you're looking at just 10 years, and that's not with even goldfish brain population. You will 10 years were probably, people would have learned a little bit about what fiat currencies and how it hyperinflates during those 10 years. So they still have that in the memory, most people, and that's going to be the problem. How are we going to reintroduce a currency that people know is so corrupted? And of course, we're looking at the current inflation, which actually Zimbabwe is now number 2 in the world when it comes to official inflation, that is, and that is 56.9%, Josh. And that is a massive devaluation. That is a huge loss in the value. It's halving of the value of the currency. And purchasing power is diminishing very rapidly in Zimbabwe. People don't believe in that garbage system that they have implemented with the fiat Zimbabwean dollar, and we're not going to see any better coming out of it this time. The problem, as they were saying, it's more electronic now. Well, now we're going to have an even worse system where people are actually corralled into that system, hopefully. But many people probably won't trust that electronic system because they've seen what happened to the last dollar, the Zimbabwean dollar that was there. So hopefully a lot of Zimbabweans are standing up against this government and actually saying that we are not going to accept your garbage currency ever again, and we would rather take cryptocurrencies, we'd rather use gold or other mediums of exchanges. They've been a multi-currency country for a while. How about just getting into other currencies that actually can compete and have a huge free market within Zimbabwe?
Yeah, without legal tender laws and bonds and all this kind of stuff. And you mentioned the goldfish kind of brains. It's amazing because the vast public of the world has this Finding Nemo Dory type brain memory where it's like they'll only remember what benefits them in the moment, whatever the news tells them to remember, whatever the news tells them to repeat. There's trend after trend after trend, and then half a year goes by and we forget about it, even if it was the biggest story in the news at the time, because people are being manipulated. The minds of the masses are manipulated, and we've seen the same thing happen with central banking so many times. Every single fiat currency in history has failed, folks, every single one. So the fact that we just keep going in circles after circle after circle over this, it's a testament to how insanely manipulated the minds of the masses are, because this is your money, folks. This is your life. This is your livelihood. And you'd think these kinds of things would lead to you rising up in the streets and not asking for government to do something for you, but overthrowing it and not replacing it with another flavor of collectivism.
No, Josh, what you got to remember is hey, there's a new currency in town. Don't worry, it's never going to happen what happened before. Everything is fine. Trust the government this time. We're not going to make the same mistakes. We learned from our mistakes back in 2008 when we blew up the currency. No, this is not going to happen. This is just another coup of the elites trying to take over the money supply again, and controlling resources. It's all about controlling the resources within the country. And also the currency, because if you can control the currency and then you have the local banks, indebting people, it's a perfect enslavement system. And they don't want to give this up very willingly. The problem is, though, hopefully that the Zimbabwean people would look through those ideas that are getting put forward now and say, like, that's a stupid idea. Do you think we're going to trust you guys this time? You guys screwed up last time. Why would we trust you ever again?
Well, yeah, you'd think that they would think about that more often when they keep becoming more and more impoverished, and they have to look at the source, and they just think it's the guy, the puppet, the guy, the face of the movement, the guy in charge is in charge of their money. No, I mean, this is a central banking system. This is a basic economics. This has nothing to do with a specific leader. I mean, some do it worse than others, but overall, it's the same method of fiat madness and centralization and legal tender laws and debt servitude and being subservient to the bankers and the government because of it. It's just this perpetual paradigm that people keep getting sucked into because they look at the wrong reasons for the crisis and then repeat them over and over again.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're looking at like things happening over here. Meanwhile, everything is happening right in front of their faces while they're getting screwed over. And this is happening all across the world. And it's funny. They say a lot of economists said, like, well, today's currencies haven't failed. Well, not yet, guys. Not yet. That's kind of the rule. It is still a fiat currency.
That's kind of like saying we haven't had an ice age this last century, so it's never going to happen. Well, I don't know. We've seen multiple ice ages before. Does that mean that we're just not going to have one because it hasn't happened in our lifetime? And besides that, if you go outside of the US dollar, it has happened in our lifetime, in my lifetime as a 24-year-old, multiple times in different countries around the world. It's just the news doesn't, hang that over our heads and tell us about that because it doesn't benefit them for everyone to realize the slave complex that people have been forced into.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. It's all the government system that teaches our kids what to believe in, and then you have all the pharma propping you full of bad chemicals. You have chemicals coming through the food supply, so you're dumbing down the population. I was recently reading an article that was asking why is people getting so much dumber, and this is kind of why. It's a constant government propaganda that are getting shoved down your throat all the way from your little kid in kindergarten school and through the schooling system. And all the way until you're grown up, you keep on watching mainstream media and all these different platforms that are just propaganda platforms for the elites to then have you in control. That is what's happening in Zimbabwe and everywhere else. We're just pawns here in this huge, way bigger play of control over the masses because people are afraid. The people that are the elites are afraid that the masses will fully evolve into what we've been talking about a lot of times, which is fully, responsible individuals that believe in a voluntarist society and a non-aggression principle. Think if those ideas actually got to mainstream and people start to realize, like, hey, we don't need to kill each other because the banks over here and the banks over here are lending money for us to just go and murder each other. It's a whole new system where people
It's the indoctrination of the masses around the world to believe that they must be ruled, that they must be enslaved, that maybe if it's not a massive extortion, that maybe it's minor extortion, but pick one or the other. It has to be one or the other. It's that collectivism mantra of for the greater good of the greater number, which people never think twice about because they're born into that system. They're taught about that system. They're indoctrinated into that system, and they can't imagine a system outside of that or a world outside of that. They feel like it's the only choice, and it isn't the only choice. And we do have solutions, by the way, because we have more solutions than we have problems, really. We just have to understand the solutions which the media won't tell you, and many independent medias won't tell you because so many independent medias are just based on fear-mongering like the mainstream medias, which is why we want to talk about the things that make you scared and give you many different solutions, because that is how we get out of this system, is understanding the solutions and taking individual responsibility. It comes down to you, no one else. Do not depend depend on other people. Self-sustainability, financial responsibility, responsibility in general, as that is a hallmark of freedom itself. It always comes down to things that I mentioned so often here: food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy in the block. And of course, many different things like gold and silver, which have, historically we see that is protecting your purchasing power, protecting your wealth. It's wealth insurance. It's not meant as an investment. It's not meant as investment advice. This is our opinion, but nonetheless, look at history. And of course, we have a link with Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com, which you could check out below as well. We are very happy to be working with one of the greatest in the history of gold and monetary history. Very happy to be doing that. And of course, things like cryptocurrency that's properly decentralized and has fundamental value, as well as blockchain infrastructure that's properly decentralized that can replace the old guard of the old way of enslavement, that enslavement complex that we're talking about. But anyway, John, as we wrap this up, can you tell everyone your bottom line? This is just, it's just so perpetual. What do you think?
Yeah, this is just completely perpetual, Josh, and it happens all the time. That's the problem. We need to get out of that system that we've been built into. And of course, in Zimbabwe, during the last hyperinflation, they started to ban gold and silver as mediums of exchange because people's like, hey, these things have value. We should use these instead of these garbage Zimbabwean dollar notes. So they tried to do that. And then, of course, they came in person and tried to threaten people. But that didn't work, actually, because people then saw that as like, hey, we don't even want your currency anymore. And that's all the trust game. So when the trust link broke in 2008 between the populace and the legal tender that the Zimbabwean dollar was, then it becomes worthless. And it became worthless very rapidly. And I could show you a chart here, Josh, that just shows you how bad the last hyperinflation was in Zimbabwe to give you a actually grasp on how fast this happened. And of course, the real ramping up just happened in 2007. That's when they had 66,212% inflation, and then jump into 1,150,000 and 888% in July, as of July 2008. And of course, I can't even pronounce the inflation that they had in mid-November. You could just show the viewers the numbers here, but it's completely insane. People in Zimbabwe needs to understand that they have tools to get away from this enslavement system, that it's the illegal tender laws and the government printing money and the banksters. They could just start using cryptocurrencies and doing trades in between each other. Zimbabwe has become a lot more technological than it was before, so it's a lot easier for them today to actually use this technology. As I said, a lot of the current economic transactions are electronic, so it's ways for them to actually get away from the banksters and the third-party system to a direct peer-to-peer transaction without needing the enslavement of that system, and then using gold and silver as well as insurance against what's coming, because I believe probably a lot of them have seen what's happened before. When you have $100 trillion bill coming out, and then it buys you two for a bear, and then 2 weeks later it just buys you 2 bear. People kind of learn from that, especially when it comes to bear. I think that would probably teach a lot of people here in Canada, of course, Josh. But yeah, that's what it is. People have been taught these rules of how bad a fiat currency was in Zimbabwe. I think they might have learned a lot of lessons, at least a decent amount of the population. So hopefully they won't commit the same mistake this time, Josh.
Yeah, some of the worst inflation in the world. Do not be a debt slave, folks. Break free from that complex. The banks and the governments depend on your dependence on them. So break free from that. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we are being more shadow banned than ever before. It's excruciatingly bad. I mean, we're talking 175 views in the first 10 seconds of being published, and then it sits there for like an hour, and then a day later we hit like 1,200 to 1,500 views out of 113,000 subscribers, and it just never moves again. And I've talked to people at YouTube about this. They claim it's just a rough month. No, we are interviewing some huge names like, J. Edward Griffin, Jeff Berwick, David Icke, so many people, Jeffrey Tucker, David Morgan, Brian Forrester, so many people, and we are hitting nobody. We are reaching nobody. No one's getting notified, and it's getting insane and intense. We need your help, folks. Make sure to see the outro of this video for more information television. It's getting to that point where they only show mainstream news videos when you search things on YouTube. All you can find, even if we have 40 times the viewers on a video on that same subject, you'll only find Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, that kind of stuff. So we need your help. So check the outro of this video for more information. And anyway,
hey, Josh, let me just chirp in there. You know, it's funny when you actually follow the mainstream narrative, that's when you get your views. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to manipulate alternative media into becoming the new lamestream media.
Yeah, and they're manipulating the minds of the masses, as always, trying to brainwash. But that's why people went to YouTube in the first place, to escape that stuff from the mainstream media. So they are shooting themselves in the foot, and we will never, ever, ever give up. Also join our newsletter, which is also linked in the comments below, pinned to the top. So thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth,
be the change.
Like what you see here, Wham? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so heavily demonetized and censored by YouTube as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. The shadow banning is getting really bad, guys. Also, check our Bitcoin address right here on the screen or in the description below. We really appreciate it. And of course, check us out at the Red Pill Expo 2019. Of course, the great G. Edward Griffin and so many other incredible speakers will be there. Our link for that is below as well. And we cannot forget Mike Maloney's goldsilver.com, which you can also find in the description. One of the greatest market and monetary historians out there. We really encourage everyone to check that out. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.